Nice.
All righty, welcome everyone. Looks like we are now live. Today we're going to be talking about managing team secrets with 1Password and Pulumi ESC. My name is Diana Esteves. I am a solutions architect here at Pulumi. And with us, we have Simon. Simon, you want to go ahead and say hello?
Yeah, hey, hello everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Simon from 1Password, like Diana said. So happy to share with you today about the new integration.
So we are going to start by doing an overview of what is Pulumi ESC, what is 1Password, and after the introduction to both technologies, we're going to dive into our first demo, where we'll take the hats more from a developer perspective and see how they can leverage ESC and 1Password to do environment variables in a Golang web application. Our second demo will cover more of a platform team activity with a deployment pipeline that deploys the application from the first demo onto GCP. Then we'll talk about any other use cases and things you can do with 1Password and ESC, as well as wrap up with any Q&A. All right, so without further ado, we are going to get started with Pulumi ESC. So what is Pulumi ESC? Well, ESC stands for Environments, Secrets, and Configuration. Pulumi ESC is meant to be a centralized management solution that can be used to store all of your different secrets and configurations, whether it be API keys, database credentials, you name it, right? It's meant to consolidate all those credentials and secrets into a single location, and that is Pulumi ESC. Pulumi ESC has a lot of your enterprise features. For instance, they do have audit logs where you can track all of the different access and who modify the environment. And you also have role-based authentication controls where you can create teams and you can create specific tokens to access specific environments. And that's what we'll show today. Pulumi ESC is a managed service within Pulumi Cloud. Pulumi Cloud is an offering where you can have all of your infrastructure needs in there, including, of course, environments. Environments, at the end of the day, are YAML files. I will say they are pretty smart YAML files. There's a few things you can do there that we'll show today. And here is an example of what a YAML file looks like. Of course, we'll be playing with that today, but you have, in this case, a 1Password integration with Pulumi ESC. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Simon, who will be talking about 1Password.
All right, let me unmute myself there. Yes. All right. Yeah, so you might wonder, like, know 1Password like as a password manager, and wonder like, hey, why is 1Password like integrating here with Pulumi, and like what's 1Password doing in this whole developer space, right? So let's talk a little bit about 1Password and dev tools and how that pieces together. So at 1Password, we believe that security and convenience don't need to be at odds with together. Like you can and should have both, like you deserve both even. And with the browser extension, like you can generate strong and unique password and automatically fill those, right? And get like both the security benefits and the convenience benefits out of that, right? And the productivity benefits, those kind of things. And these developer tool integrations bring that same security and ease of use to where developers work, or platform engineers, or like the broad sense developers. And so it extends both what you can store inside of 1Password and where you can use it, like inside of those workflows. Yeah, so I'll keep it short, but briefly mention a couple examples. But I'm sure you're all excited to dive into the demo soon, so I'll quickly go through this. So for example, you can store SSH keys into 1Password so that you don't have these on disk, the security benefit, but can also like you no longer have to like type your SSH private key passphrases, but instead like use Touch ID or like equivalents on Linux and Windows, right? You can generate these keys from the web rather than like I always tend to Google like SSH keygen commands, like what's the right flags there. I'm sure you can relate. Let me know in the chat if you if you always have to like look this up as well. But like with the integration, you can just like generate these keys from the app or right straight from like the GitHub interface, for example, if you're setting up SSH keys there, or from any of the other services where you need SSH keys. All right, so that's SSH keys. And did you know you can use this for commit signing nowadays as well? Like, so for example, GitHub just added like support for signing your commits using SSH keys. So you can have these same benefits for your commit signing as well, and do that with like just a touch of your finger there. All right, and then let's move on and talk about like API tokens and database credentials. Like you can store these in 1Password as well, and get the convenience of like working together with your team, like storing them in 1Password, bring them to all your devices, but also get that reproducibility with the team, collaborate on them, and like onboarding without like each and every one of you having to configure this over and over again, right? And then on the security side of things, that also means that you can remove secrets from disk, don't have them in your source codes, and not even have them in your artifacts, like I don't know, Docker images or those kind of things, right? All right, and so you can use the SDKs like listed there on the right, or the CLI to load these secrets. But those are not even your only option. Like you can also use integrations, right? So that you can load these secrets straight into in your workflows using the interfaces that you're already familiar with. And that's also what brings us here today. Like that's why we partnered with Pulumi here and created this ESC integration, so you can load the secret stored in 1Password through the Pulumi ESC integration. So yeah, let's see how that fits into the see that in action with the Pulumi ESC demo. So I'll pass it back to Diana again to talk about the demo.
All right, yeah, thank you, Simon. So for our first demo, we are going to walk through setting up Pulumi ESC with 1Password, and then how you can consume those secrets in a Golang web application as environment variables. So if you haven't already, you should have received a link to join a Pulumi organization. Feel free to join this organization, and there you will have access for the next 2 weeks to all of the enterprise features that we offer, including, of course, Pulumi ESC, and being able to configure your auditing and your access controls for ESC. So again, if you haven't already, please go ahead and accept that invite. That will help you follow along, or if you want to try this out at a later time, you can do so leveraging the sandbox environment that we have created for you. Alrighty, so for the first demo, this is an overall diagram of what we are about to show you. And in this scenario, we have a platform engineer that is responsible for pretty much everything that is in the green box. And then we have our developer, who is the consumer for our secrets. So Simon is going to show you how he can go about creating a vault in 1Password, as well as creating a service account and a couple of credentials that will then be accessed via Pulumi ESC. So I will show you the Pulumi side of things. So in Pulumi ESC, we're going to configure a new environment that's going to leverage the service account Simon provides us and defines a couple of credentials we would like to access. On the developer side of things, right, we want to keep things kind of abstract for them, right? And we want to make it as seamless as possible for the developer. So what we're going to show you is the developer has to make exactly 0 code changes for the application to now leverage secrets stored in a secrets manager, which is, of course, a best practice. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Simon so he can show you how to configure 1Password.
All right. So I've opened up the app here that the developers built, and it's using like environment variables to load the secrets. I think that's the most important part to highlight here. So using environment variables, and as Diana said, we're gonna not change this. We're gonna leave this exactly as it is and keep it, keep the application have those loaded through environment variables. And then in 1Password, I'll open that next to this. We have an item here in our, we have our developer vault, development environment vault, and we have a production environment vault for our app here. And so the app is called Bus. That's the name we made for it. And then inside of the development environment, we have this Google OAuth item that has a client ID and a client secrets, which maps to, like, the client ID here contains the secret that we should want to load in here. And then the client secret is this the value that we want to load in this environment variable. So next up, what we'll be doing is create a service account that has read access on this vault and on just this vault, so that we can use that together with Pulumi ESC to load the secrets from this vault into the app with these environment variables here. So I'll open up the 1Password, my 1Password for the account, and go into the developer tools here, which allows you to, under infrastructure secrets management, you can create a new service account there. So we want to create a service account and then come up with a name for it. So let's call it Pulumi ESC Buzz project, and then the development environment, right? And then we're going to grant it access to the Buzz dev vault and give it read access, so we are able to give it write or like ability to share as well. But we're just gonna do read for now, but because that's all it's need, and like we're gonna do least privilege there, right? And so it also doesn't need access to the production account. So let's create that. All right, and then that creates a token for us, which I'm gonna even store in 1Password as well. And let's call it service account live, so that Diana can use this and take it from here inside of the ESC side of things. So we've just created a service account in 1Password with access to this vault, so that it can load the secret into the app, which, let me bring up the app again. Red screen. There it is in the app, so that it can load the secrets into those environment variables. So I'll pass it to Diana again, so she can show like how we can take this service account credential and configure ESC there.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty, so let me switch over to my screen. So thank you, Simon. So in my side, I have access to the same vault that Simon configured with a service account, and you can see that he just added this new credential, which allows me to read all of the credentials within this vault programmatically. So this is really the only requirement that Pulumi ESC needs in order to access your secrets programmatically. So I am going to go ahead and copy that credential and then switch over to Pulumi ESC. So here we are in a Pulumi Cloud account. So like I said earlier, Pulumi ESC is a service within Pulumi Cloud. And in here, we have our environments tab, where you can see existing environments and or create new ones. Before we create a new environment, I also wanted to quickly show you some of the access controls. So we have teams, right? So we have the concept of creating groups. And in this case, we have two teams. We have development and production. Within the development team, I can add and remove members. So this is more of like your enterprise features. And I can create an access token that pertains precisely to this team. And with that token, I can add or remove access to a particular environment. So of course, if we have a development team, we want to have access to the development ESC environment. And for the developer, right, we don't want them to modify the environment. We rather just want them to consume the environment. So that will be the environment open permission level. So it can get very granular on how to allow your consumers to access those secrets. We also have audit logs, so you'll probably see my name everywhere here. But with the audit logs, you can download them as a CSV file, and here you have an entire trail of who did what, when, and what did they do with the environment, right? So all of that is available in the enterprise version. So now that I show you some of those features, let's actually work on creating an environment. So the way we do so is you can create a new environment, give it a name, and go ahead and click create. So I already have a skeleton code here for today's live demo. This skeleton code actually comes from our documentation. So in our documentation, we give you the syntax that you need to follow in order to wire up your 1Password secrets to be able to be consumed by Pulumi ESC. So there's a particular syntax that we need to follow. It's all described here. I've already taken this syntax and created my template. So the first thing I need, or really the only thing I need to access my 1Password secrets, is to provide my service account token. So I am going to go ahead and fetch the service account token that Simon just created. And I am going to paste that here. And I am going to paste it as a secret, which means once I save this file, it's going to be encrypted so that you can't really access, you can decrypt it unless you have the right credentials. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this for now. And the next thing, now that I have access to my vault, is I have to specify which credentials I am interested in. So in here, we have 2 credentials that we would like to consume for our application. So these are my Google OAuth credentials. So I can actually copy my secret reference and paste it here for the client's ID. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the client secret. All right, and I can save my changes. To make sure everything's working, I am going to open the environment. So once I open the environment, you can see that these have been declared as secrets. I can open it and show you the actual values. So you can see that in this particular ESC environment, I have declared 2 environment variables. And the names of these environment variables precisely match what the developer needs for their environment. So now that we have an environment created, let's go ahead and switch over to the application Simon was showing you earlier. So here we have a Golang application, right? The Golang application is actually using Google OAuth credentials. It's also using a Gemini API key, which we have pre-configured. Now, as a developer, right, if you want to go ahead and test your application, right, you may do something like go run your application. And now it's running on port 8000. So let me go ahead and access it. So here is my sample application. It has Google OAuth. At this point, I have not loaded the environment. So I expect my OAuth credentials to fail, right, because those are not loaded into the environment. So how do I load those environments that were created in Pulumi ESC? Well, as we said earlier, you do not have to change anything in the code. When you run the application, we are now going to use the ESC CLI to open the environment, which has the values for the Google OAuth credentials, as well as the Gemini API key. And then I am going to go ahead and run the application just as I did earlier with my go run command. So what this will do, right, it will talk to Pulumi ESC. Pulumi ESC is going to retrieve the credentials from 1Password and load them into the environment. So now, if I go back to my localhost 8000, I should have those credentials loaded, which means I should be able to continue with my OAuth authentication flow. I can see that worked. It loaded my Google profile with my name and an access token. So Hello, folks. So the way this bus application demo works is I can give it a phrase and use Gemini to spell out the letters in my phrase. So this is happening with my API key. So I can now get my input and get each letter spelled out. So this concludes the first demo for today, where we show you how to configure 1Password to store our credentials, how to access those credentials with Pulumi ESC, and then finally have a developer consume those credentials as environment variables. So now let's head over back to our slides and see where we are. So here is an example of what we did today. In the meantime, let's see if we have any questions that have come up. So it looks like we do have a question, so thank you for that. So the question is, multiple cloud service providers, and I think Simon, you went ahead and answered that. So yes, you can create multiple 1Password service accounts. In fact, I think we may have done that. We can always show you how to create multiple service accounts with different permissions on the 1Password side of things. So thank you for your question, and please keep them coming. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and go back to the slides. All right, so again, first demo, we try to follow best practices from a developer perspective. So as a developer, right, we're constantly told that we should not check API keys into our version control system, of course, or we shouldn't really be storing sensitive data in our local environment. So one way to not completely disrupt our development environment and what we're used to is by leveraging these external systems that really have minimal to no disruption into a developer's workflow, which is part of one of the biggest responsibility that platform engineers have to do. Alrighty, so if you have any questions, please feel free to answer. Otherwise, we are going to move on to the next part. Okay, so in this next section, we are going to cover some of the more advanced things that you can do with Pulumi, right? We talked about ESC, so we are going to talk about some other things that you may be interested in, especially as a platform engineer or somebody in a DevOps role. Of course, let's go ahead and first define what is a platform engineer. There are a lot of different definitions out there, like this one in particular from our CTO, Luke, right? So the responsibility here is to build out core cloud infrastructure and providing the tools to make essentially everybody else's job a little bit easier. All right, so with the solutions for platform teams, we show Pulumi ESC, right? But there's a whole portfolio of those that we offer. We are going to see the Pulumi GitHub app here shortly, which I like a lot. I use it for some of my personal pet projects, so we'll see that today. There is also an automation API so that everything that we are doing in the terminal can be programmed and done programmatically, which is particularly useful in CI/CD solutions. We also have a policy as code, right, where you can ensure certain enforcement levels of compliance with things like PCI compliance or anything you may have within your organization. You can enforce those rules with our policy package. And lastly, we also have Pulumi deployments. That is our managed CI/CD solution. Similar to the GitHub app, but slightly more powerful. It gives you some other features. One of the things I like in Pulumi deployments is that you can create temporary environments to test infrastructure and then tear it down. So we are going to get ready to start with our second demo. And I think I did see a question that someone did not get an invite to the org. If you did not get an invite to join the Pulumi org, you can share your email with me in the chat. and I will go ahead and send you a link to join the organization for Pulumi Cloud, where you can access all of the features that we're showing you here today. Alrighty, so I apologize for that. Please send me an email and I will try to get that resolved. Okay, so with that, we are moving on to our second demo. This one is slightly more advanced. So we're essentially taking that bus application that you saw earlier and promoting it into our production environment. Production, right, typically requires another set of credentials that typically reside in multiple places, right? So with 1Password, we can consolidate and we can store the credentials we need in a single location and access them with Pulumi ESC. So for the second demo, our developer has tested the application. It works. So they are going to go ahead and do a commit against a GitHub repository. And this commit is then going to trigger a deployment pipeline. So what we want to mimic, it's more of a CI/CD deployment environment where the developer feels good about the application, commits it, and from then on, everything happens seamlessly, like meaning we are going to take that code, compile it, test it, convert it, package it into an image, and deploy it to the cloud, right? So all of that is going to happen by accessing credentials that reside in 1Password. They are accessed via Pulumi ESC, and within Pulumi ESC, we then provide a token to GitHub so that GitHub can access all the credentials it needs to successfully deploy a Golang application into the cloud. Alrighty, so without further ado, we are going to switch over and Simon is going to show you everything you need on the 1Password side of things to push our application into production.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right. All right. So similarly as before, let me screen share there. Similarly as before, we have our vault here on the production side, and it similarly has the secrets there that we're going to load into our code. So it has environment variables there as well. And we can go through a similar flow here to set up the service accounts. So now we'll do a Pulumi ESC buzz project, and then production environment, and then granted access to the prod vault rather than the dev vault, right? To give that access, and to immediately answer like the prior question about like, what if you have multiple cloud environments? You can similarly set up multiple service accounts for each cloud environment as well. So like we do it now per stage of like dev, prod, those types of environments. But you can also do it like per cloud space or any other separation you wish to make. And then once we've created that, I'll store it again, but now in a prod vault, and give it a name again of service account live, so we know which one to use. And that's the process again. And what we can also do, and I'll then hand it back off to Diana for the other part of this demo on the ESC side again. I'll stop sharing now.
All righty, yeah, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So here we go. Alrighty, so we are back in our Pulumi Cloud, in particular, our Pulumi ESC environment. And in here, let's talk a little bit more about a production environment. So to compare it to the development environment, like the only thing I really needed to provide to the developer was OAuth credentials and an API key. However, when we move to production, there's a lot more configurations and things that we need. So one of the things that we need here is I need to be able to push my application, in this case, onto Google Cloud, which means ESC needs to have Google Cloud credentials. Now, ESC integrates with 1Password, and it also integrates with a few other popular providers out there. Google OAuth, Google with OIDC is one of them. So I just wanted to quickly show you here that I have already configured Pulumi ESC to work with Google Cloud OIDC. So what this is going to allow is going to allow my pipeline to be able to deploy resources onto my Google Cloud account. So these credentials are not coming from 1Password specifically. They're actually handled and created, and they reside within Pulumi ESC. So that's another great thing about ESC, right? It's meant to be a centralized solution, so it can fetch secrets from different secrets manager providers, Google Cloud being one of them. So in this particular scenario, I have already pre-configured Google Cloud with OIDC, and again, so that I can deploy my application as a Cloud Run function. So I wanted to quickly show you that environment, and the reason for that is because in my production ESC environment, one of the great things I can do with ESC is I can actually reference and inherit secrets that have been previously defined elsewhere. So in my production ESC environment, it's like, hey, I actually need to leverage those Google GCP credentials. So instead of recreating them, let me go ahead and reference them and consume them that way. In particular, I am actually reusing my Google Gemini key. I only have one. So another thing I can do is I can inherit, right, or leverage a secret that is defined and accessed elsewhere, and I can reference that within my existing environment. And in addition, right, to the secrets that I am inheriting it via the imports clause, I am also accessing some new additional secrets. In this case, I am going to show you, I have my, let me go ahead and switch over. I have my production vault. And in my production vault, I am going to have slightly more credentials than I did in my development environment, right? I am going to have, again, that service account to be able to access the 1Password secrets. I am also going to have Docker credentials because I would like to bundle that application you saw earlier into a Docker image and push it onto my Docker Hub account. Not only that, but in addition to deploying my application onto GCP, I would like to also add a Cloudflare CDN in front of it, right? Just for caching and for speeding purposes. So in that case, I'm going to also store my Cloudflare credentials in 1Password. In addition to that, I now have Google OAuth credentials that pertain to a production environment. So I have Google OAuth credentials for a development environment and as well for a production environment, and I would like to leverage the production ones for production. So this is what my 1Password vault looks like. And you can see references to these various secrets in my Pulumi ESC environment configuration. So this is slightly more elaborate, right? Because we have a lot more credentials that are needed to push something to production. So you will see a lot of these credentials here. And again, I am declaring these as environment variables. Okay, so at this point, we have the ESC environment configured. We can fetch credentials from within Pulumi ESC. We can also fetch credentials that reside in 1Password to provide a full environment that now my pipeline is going to consume. So how do we do so? Now that we have my environment, right, our consumer is no longer going to be that developer, right? Our consumer is going to be a deployment pipeline. So it so happens that in my GitHub repository, I also have another application, if you will, that is going to define all of the cloud resources that I need to push this application into production. In order to define those cloud resources, I am going to use Pulumi infrastructure as code, which is what Pulumi is commonly known for, right? Is what gave a lot of the popularity to Pulumi, is the ability to define infrastructure as code. It's available in a number of programming languages. I am going to use Golang just because I like Golang, right? But it also supports Python, TypeScript, JavaScript, YAML, and I'm probably forgetting one or two. So in this other application, I have infrastructure or cloud resources defined. So what you will see here is the first thing I want to happen when this thing goes into production is I want to build my Docker file into an image, and I want to push that image into my Docker Hub account. So for that, I need Docker credentials, and those credentials are coming from 1Password. Moving along, I then want to take that container or that image that I just pushed into my Docker Hub, and I want to create a Cloud Run function, right? So this is a serverless function. If you're coming from AWS, it's similar to a Lambda function in the AWS world. So in order to deploy a Cloud Run function, right, I need Google-related environment variables. I need a project, I need a region, and a few more details for my container. So in order to run my container, right, I have to pass in the same Google OAuth credentials you saw earlier. So all the credentials, environment variables you see here are coming from 1Password via Pulumi ESC. Moving along, I have my Cloudflare resource, right? Because I would like to create a DNS record in front of my serverless function, just so that it's easier to read. So in order to create a DNS record in Cloudflare, I need Cloudflare credentials. And those credentials are coming from 1Password. So this is what the code looked like, right? In my code, I am defining all of the cloud resources that I need to push my application into production. So how does this actually happen? In this case, I have a GitHub app configured. My GitHub application or my GitHub action is going to trigger whenever there is a commit against my main branch. What is going to happen is my GitHub action is going to, of course, check out the code, get any dependencies, and then is going to deploy my application using Pulumi's infrastructure as code and using a reference to my Pulumi ESC environment. That reference resides in a YAML file. So the presence of this is the only thing I need to be able to essentially download and consume all of the secrets in Pulumi ESC. Right? It's really just a one-liner indicating what environment to reference. So in order to see this in action, I am going to just create a dummy change. I'm going to create a dummy change just so I can trigger a commit. So I am here in my GitHub repository. So what's going to happen? I'm just going to add my change, and I am going to push my commit onto my live demo pull request. As soon as I push that commit, that is going to trigger the GitHub action. So let's go ahead and see that in action. So now add that, git commit, live demo, and git push. Okay, so there we go. Alrighty, so now I pushed a change onto my pull request. So let's see what that looks like. So what is happening now? Here is my GitHub repository. I have a pull request open. That pull request has a bunch of commits, and it has the one that I just performed. And what is going to happen is that it's going to trigger my GitHub action to fire up. My GitHub action is using a secret, which I have stored here as this variable, Pulumi sandbox, my name, teams prod. This token was created to only be able to access the environments that I specified. So if I head over to my teams, right, I have a production team. And within this production team, I created a token, which is what I provided to my GitHub Actions, my CI/CD pipeline. And I granted permissions to only the environments I need and only the ability to open them, right? So GitHub Actions cannot modify those environments. It can only consume them. So that is how we wired everything up, right? So in GitHub Actions, I have a RBAC specific token, right? Everything is audited, so I know what's happening. And if I head over to my actions, so here are some of the previous runs. So we can see that this is running. It is compiling or setting up my Go repository. It is deploying all of my infrastructure, getting all the credentials, wiring everything up, and pushing my application into production. And I can actually show you that because we have a production stack. So here is what I keep track of all of my infrastructure changes that have been happening. So here is the latest change. I can learn more about what happened. I can see all the resources that were pushed onto the cloud. So again, all these resources were pushed onto GCP, onto Docker Hub, and Cloudflare. So I'm essentially saving credentials from 3 different resources, right, in 1Password. So if I head over to my Docker Hub account, I should be able to see my bus image in there. If I head over to my GCP account, I should be able to see the bus service in there. And if I head over to my Cloudflare account, I should be able to see the DNS record that I want. So let's go ahead and do so. Let me see how we're doing on time. Oh, actually, I think we're pretty good. So I can spend some time showing you all the different things that we just deployed. So here is my image that was deployed to production. My Docker image actually lives in my application, right? So this is something that perhaps your developer is responsible for putting together, right? It really depends how you divide responsibilities. But this is the image that is being created and pushed onto my Docker Hub account. And now if we head over to my GCP console, right, I should be able to see my service. So if I do cloud run, so here is the service that was deployed. I can open it up and it created a particular image. So let's just make sure it works. Hopefully everything is good. So this is the same application that you saw a developer doing in their local host earlier, but now is available to the entire world, right? Because this is, I made it public. So anybody can access it. I can log in with my Google OAuth credentials. All of these secrets are coming in from 1Password via Pulumi ESC. So let's try something, I don't know, I can't think of anything. So let's just do hello world. Once my application is going to spell out the phrase by sending a request to Gemini. So here we see the response. Because this is using AI, right? It's likely going to look a little bit different every time I send it. Again, AI is doing the best it can to answer my request, but you can see it may not always be consistent. Alrighty, so with that, we now have our application running as a Cloud Run function. I also created a Cloudflare CDN record, as you saw earlier in my infrastructure as code solution. I think I called it boss.apxyall.com, just because that's one of the domains that I own. So you can see that my Cloudflare CDN record is working. And I can actually show you my Cloudflare account. Let's see. See, I'm using 1Password to store my Cloudflare credentials. Let's go ahead and reload. And yes, use this. So, alrighty. Oh no, I don't want to create an account. I want to use my existing account. All right, well, I was going to show you my DNS records, but you can tell they have been created because otherwise I will not be able to access my Cloud Run function via this DNS record. All righty, so let's come back to the slides and see what sorts of questions and things we may have. All righty.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight this one. I think this is one maybe we can show live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions about like how to Dockerize this setup and how to have it work with environment variables and the key values. So maybe we can maybe you can show how that key value mapping of the environment variables works in our demo example, for example.
Yeah, and it so happens that the way I am consuming my ESC secrets is via environment variables. It's not the only way to consume them, but because it's so common, that is what I am doing here as well. So let me switch back to the screen, and of course, let me know if this answers your question. So if you are doing this in Docker, you may have something like this in your Docker file, and your Docker file needs some environment variables to work. This is actually not needed. The only reason why I put that in here is just to inform you that in order for this Buzz application to work properly, right, you should have these 4 environment variables defined. Right, so this is not needed, but it helps guide whoever is looking at this Docker file, like, hey, if I want to use this image, I should probably define these 4 different environment variables. So the way I can do so with Pulumi ESC is I know that I have these 4 secrets already residing in my production vault. Right, so because this is residing in a production vault, number 1. Number 2, because I know I am accessing them via Pulumi ESC, right? So that's the second thing that I need. Pulumi ESC prod, right? Because this is production. So in here, I know that I have those variables available. So what that means is that I can now do something like ESC run, and this time I am going to run or actually I'm going to open my environment. So open my production environment. So this allows me from my terminal, it allows me to see what the environment looks like. So if you want to use Docker locally, right, you can use the ESC CLI to open the environment, to take a look at the credentials. This might take a second because I do have quite a few credentials defined. And now that I have access to these environment variables, I can go ahead and do my local Docker, I don't know what it is, Docker run, and then the name of my image with the environment variables, because they have been preloaded with valid values in my environment. So this is my environment. I'm just going to go really quickly because I have a lot of credentials in there. But let me know if that answers your question, or if there's any follow-up questions. I'm more than happy to take a look. I'm just going to leave this slide up because this really highlights, this is really a summary of what we just showed for that second demo. Simon, any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight this one next because I think it ties into what you showed before really well as well. So it was about Kubernetes specifically. Are there any things that folks need to do differently if they want to use it in Kubernetes compared to like the local Docker you just showed?
Yeah, and I want to go fetch. I think we have specific guidance because Kubernetes it's very popular for Pulumi and Kubernetes. They kind of go hand in hand. We have a lot of users that leverage the Kubernetes provider to define Kubernetes related resources. ESC, it's also one of the integrations. And let me see.
Yeah, I dropped one link. I found a block on your end on this.
Okay.
In the chat there.
Yeah, I can. It might have been the same one. Let me see. I'll paste it again in case it differs. But yes, what I would suggest is, like, I guess the answer is yes, you can use it. The how part, right? It may depend on your particular environment, but definitely take a look at this blog post, and that can give you some guidance or how you can get started with Pulumi ESC and containerized environments. So hopefully that answers your question. If there's any follow-ups, feel free. We're just doing questions now. We're pretty much wrapping up. So any questions you may have. Let's see, what else do we have? I think we answered this one.
Yes, yeah.
You can have multiple service accounts, and they can do multiple read-write, whatever a combination you need for the vault or vaults. All right, any other questions that I may have missed, Simon? I see a few here.
Yeah, we just got one in, like, if you can use the 1Password operator for production. The answer is yes, you can. That's a quick answer.
Okay, all right.
Oh yeah, there's one about rotation. So how can you rotate these secrets automatically every 60 days, for example? Yeah, so one option, I think, if you have anything to add, like,
yeah, go ahead.
One option here would be to use like the either SDKs on for 1Password or the 1Password CLI to automate automatically, like, fetch, roll in your script, and then upload new credentials there. So you can use the 1Password CLI to do that if you have any scripts for that. Or you can use the SDKs, which is actually a new thing that we're building. Actually, the integration with Pulumi ESC that you've just saw was built using the Go SDK that we recently built. So we worked together with Pulumi to develop that and iterate, and based on their feedback. So that was very good collaboration to create these SDKs. And so we'll be publishing those soon as well. So you can, like, leverage those for both reading, but also like writing back secrets. And then next up, we're also working on a 1Password provider for Pulumi. So you can use those to manage your secrets, like, as you want to do, right? Like in code, in source control. And so you can use that to like roll and manage the life cycle of your secrets as well, of course. Not sure if that's an answer to your question. Let me know in the chat if there's any more, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. And I do see another question here. It's not in the Q&A tab, but I can just read it out loud. It's the question is there a way to self-host ESC? At this point, the answer is no. It is currently offered within Pulumi Cloud. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. It's offered within Pulumi Cloud. I would say stay tuned. And of course, a lot of the Pulumi ESC part, the CLI in particular, is open source. So something I would suggest to you as well as everybody else in the audience is we are open source. We are in preview. We're hoping to GA very, very soon, which means that we are eager to get your feedback. So if there's anything you would like to see that perhaps is not already there today, please follow up with a GitHub issue. See if there's already one there. You can upvote it at your own needs as a comment, or you can open another GitHub issue. And with that, I will get you the link to our GitHub ESC repository.
I beat you to it.
Yeah, there we go. And then you can feel free to open up a new issue if you need to. Alrighty, so that's the link here. With that, do we have any other questions?
If we have time for one more, there's one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me find it. Where did I leave it? About the manifest. Where did I? Oh, wait, it's there. Maximize. There it is. How to use it with manifest file with config map. I think this relates to the Kubernetes manifest, right?
Yeah, I think this is related to Kubernetes. So what I would say, if you have, so I guess the question, I need to know whether you mean storing a manifest file in Pulumi ESC or kind of interpolating maybe some of the secrets in your config map. So I will like to follow up with you on this question. So I will provide some links or where you can find me where we can follow up so that we can get you an answer. All right, so I would like to give you an answer. I can't give you an answer right away because I just want to learn a little bit more about your particular use case. All righty, so with that, let's see what else we have. Thank you, by the way, for all of your answers. This is very helpful. It's definitely a lot more interactive, so I appreciate it. All righty, so quickly, just want to reiterate what we did for demo number 2, right? It is a bit more elaborate, right? It's a lot more moving parts. However, it all works when we store, right? We decide to store secrets in 1Password, access them via ESC. With ESC, we also happen to have dynamic credentials with Google Cloud, which is a more secure way than having those static credentials for something like your cloud infrastructure definition. So another integration point for Pulumi ESC. The consumer in this case was a deployment pipeline, right? So we provided a access controlled token to only the environment we are interested in, so that whenever a developer does a commit against a repository, it will automatically trigger the pipeline. It will access all of the different resources and clouds it needs to make sure that application makes it to production successfully. All right, so with that, I wanted to cover a couple of other cool things you can do that we didn't get a chance to show you here today. But by all means, let us know if it's something of interest. One of them was the GitHub signing feature. I know Simon talked about it briefly, right? But there's a way of verifying who you are and handling that SSH aspect when using GitHub for solution. There is also a 1Password CLI available that you can use to fetch your secrets and see what's there, and just browse through your vault. It doesn't have to all be through the UI or the browser, but you can use a CLI to do something similar. So it's a more programmatic way of accessing what's in 1Password. You can create vaults, you can store secrets, fetch secrets, all within the 1Password CLI. And the other thing with Pulumi ESC, right? Today we saw the Google OIDC integration. We saw, of course, 1Password integration. There are also other integrations available. You can check those out in our ESC providers link. We have AWS, Azure, and a couple of other providers that we integrate with as well. Another thing that I will absolutely love to showcase, if I was given more time, is the ability to automate everything, right? We are in a DevOps world. We are in a platform engineering world where we don't want to be clicking around, and because we cannot really save and version those clicks. So if we need to repeat them in the future, right, we have to write down instructions somewhere. So we do have a lot of different providers for our infrastructure as code solution. There is a GitHub provider, there's a Google Cloud provider, and I can actually share with y'all that very, very soon we are going to have an official 1Password provider. This is important because it allows to define all of the configurations that it allows us to define a lot of the things that we show you today by clicking around, but actually have a blueprint in code that then we can version and we can automate and whatnot, right? And it becomes repeatable. So it's a best practice. If you want to stay tuned, which I highly encourage you to sign up to the 1Password newsletter, you can be the first one to know when that 1Password provider gets released by signing up for the newsletter, as well as any updates to the 1Password SDKs. I was actually great. It was great to hear that they are supporting multiple programming languages, which is amazing because it's really speaking to the developer community. Alrighty, so with that, we are getting very close to the end. So this is not the only workshop. We do workshops quite a bit nowadays. We have some upcoming workshops. We actually have one tomorrow that I will be doing on getting started with infrastructure as code. So if that was new to you, definitely encourage you to register for tomorrow's workshop, where we will do a deep dive on infrastructure as code using Pulumi. And last but not least, just some last call to actions here. You will receive a feedback email within the next hour or so. I highly encourage you to please dedicate 30 seconds to fill it out. It really helps us a lot improve on the next round, see what you like, perhaps what something you expected to see that you didn't see. Please do let us know in that feedback email. We review it as a team and we try to learn from it and incorporate that feedback into the next workshop. All right, so with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and check in with Simon. Any last minute things, anything I may have left out from your end?
No, I just want to echo what you said. It's been a pleasure, especially like lots and lots of interactions and questions. It's been busy in the chat, and that's always a good thing, right? So thanks for all your questions, and super curious and looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback in the survey that's coming up. And yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions beyond this workshop when you're diving in. And yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Reach out. We are everywhere, whether you are on Twitter, Slack. 1Password also has an excellent Slack community. You can join and ask questions. We're here to help. So definitely reach out, and thank you for joining us. We will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, y'all.